People of Reddit, what stupid rule at your work/school backfired beautifully? Zero tolerance ended shortly after a bully got thrown through a window, because if I'm getting suspended for defending myself I'm gonna make it worth my while. Mad respect to the kid who tossed their bully through a window. My kid got suspended for fighting, because he finally got tired of being made fun of by a friend of his. This kid was like 80 pounds soaking wet, 5 feet tall, and ran his mouth constantly. My kid is like 135 pounds 510 and super placid. He didn't want to get into it, but the kid shoved him, so of course he shoved him back. Kid decides to do a soccer style injury and throws himself backwards onto the floor. Got a call from the school that only my kid was being suspended because the other kid's mom works in the school. This was like the third time he picked fights with other kids and got away with it. Ugh. Told my kid I didn't care. He wasn't in trouble. Told the principal that I wanted both boys to talk to the counselor together to hash it out. He refused and said the other kid didn't have to, but mine did. Ugh. Zero tolerance my ass. I taught high school for a decade. Zero tolerance is a cop-out for lazy, spineless administrators who don't want to offend anyone or stand up for themselves, justice, students, or the educational process. They can just point to a sentence in the code of conduct and shrug their shoulders instead of saying who was right and who was wrong. Yeah, I told that to my son, who was being bullied. If you're going to be suspended no matter what, make sure it's worth it, was my take on zero tolerance. A coworker of mine said a previous job counted the number of attendance incidents you had, not the severity. He went to punch in one day as the clock ticked to 8:01 and said if I'm gonna get an incident, I'm gonna get an incident. Left without clocking in and went fishing for 3 days. Proper modern school administration would have just made all above ground classes off limits. No more windows. No more problems. Back in 2014 our hours made a rule people couldn't go to other buildings. We had 3 buildings within a block of each other. All 3 had shipping areas and the warehouse employees had to go to each building to work. We were told to stay at one building. I mentioned we ship out of all 3, who is going to do the work. The genius said oh it'll be taken care of. Next day 500k shipment didn't go out. The following day we have a meeting. Why didn't you ship this? 2 days ago we were told to stay in our building and someone would take care of it. The rule was quickly changed. Okay. But why didn't they want people to go to other buildings? Why on earth was ours making rules like that? That sounds like it's way outside their scope. Required every employee to use electronic time clocks to punch in/out for work including lunch. Punching in late or leaving early would cause your pay to be docked and getting a discipline letter. Multiple people wanted to sabotage the clocks, cut the cords, etc. but wiser heads prevailed. Everyone arrived several minutes early and left late. Every single day. To avoid getting into trouble. Unfortunately, this created unimpeachable evidence of hours worked. The employer had to pay out thousands of dollars in overtime the first month. The clocks disappeared exactly 5 weeks after they were installed with no notification. I worked in a call center and we had a similar clock system. Except we were allowed to arrive 5 minutes early then get on the phones at their scheduled time. One girl figured out they would pay for those 5 minutes. She started clocking in earlier and earlier until she was arriving an hour early and sat around for an hour every day. 5 extra hours of overtime every week. For close to a year or more until she quit, with one in management catching wind. One of the first jobs I had, as a trainee in a big corporation's office. My supervisor noticed I came in a few minimums late once and told me off for it. I did arrive at 9:03 or what, but a few more minimums and my computer was booted up and I started working. Same day. Close to 9:30, I saw several coworkers coming out of the kitchen with coffee still in their hands and chatting. Getting to their desks and just then booting their computers. Boss didn't say a word. So I took up joining my coworkers for a 30 minimum coffee break every single morning for the 2 or 3 months I continued to work there. Every shift, there's a quota we need to fulfill, and then, even if you do fulfill it, you have to keep working until your 8 hours are up. Cue everyone speeding for 4 hours, having a 3-hour lunch/coffee break, then slowly moving their ass for an hour, No rule about us taking necessary breaks if we're still capable of reaching the quota. Now we're allowed to stop once we're done. Geez, a 3-hour lunch break is one of the most amazing things I've heard. I worked at Starbucks for like 5+ years before and during undergrad, and at one point our district manager thought it was a good idea to implement a just say yes policy, where we literally weren't allowed to tell the customer no. Lasted for about 3 months, and in that 3 months our unaccounted product and waste went up over 300%, because when the post didn't have a way to punch in a customer request we had to just do it anyways. We also got complaints from stores in surrounding districts because they had angry customers who were requesting things that were against local food service code, and told them that we did it for them at our store. I knew exactly how that policy was going to play out, and I just laughed every time management was freaking out about the problems it was causing. Give me all the money in the cash register and make me a free iced coffee. We shall not deny a customer even the most ridiculous request. Edit. Screwed up the line lol. I'm amazed that someone came up with that policy and thought it was a good idea. When COVID started, our boss demanded that our entire team sit in on group Zoom calls, even if the topics on the agenda didn't have anything to do with their roles. She felt it would build team unity. Productivity dropped, negative Google reviews came in. Staff became more stressed. When she demanded answers on the next Zoom call, one of my co-workers bluntly said, well, I would reply to this woman's voicemail, but I'm stuck on this Zoom call. After a round of needless layoffs at my old company, one of the C-level people had us on a call asking why things weren't getting done. One of my coworkers said, I think the person who would have done that particular job no longer works here. Okay. That's a minor case of malicious compliance. Ugh. I got written up for missing 2 of the 5 staff meetings held thus far 1 year. One of them, I was having a medical emergency and was seeking medical attention and had told colleagues as well as attempted to contact the department head. The other, I was explicitly told by the department head who wrote me up that I didn't need to attend and could hold an after-school rehearsal with my drama students instead. The bottom floor of my secondary school was a square that had corridor all the way around. After some incident where a kid got knocked over, they implemented a one-way system. Unfortunately, they were very strict on enforcing it. If you accidentally walked past your class, you couldn't just turn around. They seemed very proud of their new rule, until everyone started showing up late for class because they had to do extra laps of the bottom floor. That's ridiculous. I'm the one who lives closest to work, so if the building alarm goes off overnight, I'm first on the list to get the call from the alarm company. It used to be that if we had good reason to believe the alarm was not an actual break-in, we could tell them not to summon the police and ignore the alarm. I can access the building cameras from home. The most common alarm was the cleaning crew who were always messing up the disarming. Then a sister site ignored an alarm that turned out to be an actual break-in. And the facilities director decided that no matter what, if there was an alarm we should have the alarm company summon the police. Then go to the building, get the police all clear, and reset the alarm. This was a pain in the ass, but rare enough, and I lived literally 2 minutes away. Then we contracted for the alarm company to come in and replace all of our panels and sensors. It was a nightmare process that ultimately ended up taking months. And the whole time there were phantom alarms. Sometimes multiple times a night. Each time I had to go out in the middle of the night. I'd prepare the required report, send it to the facilities director, and request to go back to the old process. Each time he said no. We couldn't afford to miss a potential real break-in. After about 3 weeks of this nonsense, I was due for some time off. I was going out of town, and the protocol for that was for me to ignore calls from the alarm company, so they moved to the next person on the list, which happened to be the facilities director. In the 5 days I was off, I must have ignored at least 4 overpass calls that all would have gone to him next. Then suddenly, nothing. When I got back I was informed that for the duration of the alarm update, we just weren't going to arm the building at all. So much for can't afford to risk a break-in. Every manager seems to love just call somebody in as their solution to every problem until fear the person who actually has to wake their ass up in the middle of the night and go in. A long while back, but my school banned the color pink because a bunch of students were wearing it one October and they thought it was a gang thing. It was for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The rule didn't go well for them. My principal banned pink silicone bracelets. They were being sold in town to raise money for breast cancer. 6 months later she had to have chemo to treat her breast cancer. It's not really funny, but it is kind of ironic. Edit. Yes, she survived. I still see her around town on occasion. Full remission. Back to better health than before. The gang hysteria seems to be a repeat offender in this thread. I've heard of tattoos and things being associated with gangs back in the day, but the only time I can recall a gang wearing color-coded uniforms is in the movie Grease. My spouse's workplace realized they didn't have a policy about sending sexual images or jokes as part of their ML acceptable use policy, so they added it. Except they made it a firing offense to send or receive sexual content. I think the intent was to stop people from subscribing to such content. They also said that your access would be immediately revoked until a determination was made. So someone got fired for something else and decided to send their whole management chain a graphically sexual image. Then report it using the anonymous tip line. It got the report, concluded they did indeed receive sexual content, and it is required suspended all the involved ML accounts, including the SVPs. The policy has since been reworded. There's burning bridges, and then there's drying up the lake, just to fill it with gasoline. Damn. A place I used to work had a rule that executive level staff needed to be contactable when on leave. So they had a section on the leave form for the address of where you'll be staying and a contact number. Some knuckle shuffler in ours decided it applied to all staff and the shenanigans began. People would put down the address and phone number of relations shops, sports grounds, medical clinics. I gave the latitude and longitude of the place I was going camping and the UHF frequency channel my radio would be tuned to. My company used to be a small startup. In my first year I was the project manager and architect for a global system rollout. I put in my vacation days for Burning Man 6 months out in February, and my PTO was approved. Then a few months later June, my boss who had been head of the ad department got a new boss, new head of it. With a month to go until Burning Man, the new head of it told me that my project rollout was too important for me to be uncontactable at all, and that I would need to take a satellite phone to Burning Man or my vacation would be cancelled. We were still 3 months from go live, but he decided that we were at a critical moment that I had to be available for. However, neither my boss or the new head of it wanted to carry out the daily 18-minute satellite phone calls with me. Probably because they knew it was violating some labor law. So they got one of the guys in the London office to call me in the Black Rock Desert each day. I said I wouldn't take the calls before 1 PM, which was 9 PM for our man in London. Every day he called he had had a few beers and didn't give a deuce about project updates. He just wanted to know what parties had been to and what art had seen. I once had a manager tell us we couldn't hang out with each other outside of work unless we invited everyone. No edit. Her name was not Michael Scott. I was asked to do that once. Fire Road H. Indian Township. Me. Good mucking luck finding me. Didn't occur to me to give what frequency my VHF radio would have been on. Late 80s high school rule was no shorts. Classmate came for an exam with basketball shorts on that were below her knees. Teacher made her go home to change. She came back in a macro miniskirt and wrote her exam. My high school principal was known for sending girls home to change if their bra straps were showing. In my sophomore year he tried to send one of my classmates home, but she was like, "No, I've got a change of clothes. No need to send me home." So she went to the bathroom, took her bra off, and made a show of putting it in her locker. The principal was pissed, but couldn't do anything about it since she technically was following the dress code. It became a thing, like hundreds of high school girls removing their bra at school or just showing up braless as a big frick you to the principal. Clever girl, she knew how to skirt the rules. Couldn't buy drinks at lunch with cash money, had to buy some voucher. They were just cheaply made laminated pieces of paper. This was 2001. I was 13 and board point scanned the vouchers and printed them out on paper that kinda matched the color of the vouchers and laminated them myself. They were horrible made and not even the right color on the backside. Also crudely cut out. I made about 100 of them, have passed them out after I tried paying with them for myself and encountered no problems. Made some new friends and upped production. Took them about 3 weeks to find out, but by then the fakes ones had intermingled with the real ones and had already been resold to students via the student office. About half of the vouchers sold were fakes. Drinks were cash only from then on. They had no choice to accept the fakes one for a little while longer though, as they had sold and charged for some of them. Lol. Did this with the old Seattle bus passes before they switched to the swipeable kind. The year-long passes could cost as much as $300 or, yeah no, 1.00 at the local Kinkers to print off an entire page of them. Did they ever find out it was you by some error? To make moving between classes more efficient, they had designated up and down stairways, but they didn't take into account that the stairs were located at the ends of the very long corridors, which meant it was impossible to get to your next class on time. Because of this, no one bothered trying to get to class on time and just blamed the stairway rule. Should have taken their cues from Wayside School. Everybody goes up on the left and down on the right. When I was a teacher, one of my classes had this issue, since the class they were coming from was on the other end of the building and downstairs. Considering that I always saw them rushing to at least try to get to class on time, I never enforced the rule against tardiness for that class, and luckily they were a great group and none of them ever took advantage of it. Not really a rule, but a change in policy. I used to work for a major beer distributor as a delivery driver. They decided to start using less glue in the packaging to save money. We're talking a few cents per package. As a result, breakage during distribution increased drastically, causing them to eat a lot more damaged product. It caused such a large loss in profit that they quickly changed course. Edit. Since everyone is making guesses about which company I worked for, it was Anheuser-Busch. But it seems this is a common trial period for many beverage distributors. Been there. Some accountant at my oldest job, though they were a genius, switching our aircraft grease with automotive grease on rotating equipment that runs from 3000 OK up to 50,000 RPM, not even close to OK. Saved several $100 per case that first month. Fuse the shafts on 30 to 40 turbo compressors the same month. Not to mention the hundreds of production units in storage that has to be disassembled and degreased, then regressed and reassembled, all while we were already doing record. I love this. Companies trying to sacrifice quality for profit, only to find it actually costs more. Joy. Students used to smoke in the toilets, so headmaster decided to lock all male toilets, except 5 places in one. Now my school had around 700 students, out of which around 300 were male. Everyone realized that it became impossible to go to the toilet quickly. Result: some guys went in one and pissed/defecated in all trash cans. A lot. No one found them, but all the other toilets opened up immediately. Edit. For clarification, this happened in Eastern Europe. My middle school in Canada closed all the boys' toilets, but one after a few delinquent kids started stringing up toilet paper everywhere and flushing paper towels to clog the toilets. They actually boarded up the doors of the closed restrooms. This persisted for a few months until some parents stormed in as a group one day and verbally dragged the principal's tits over some coals. The others reopened, but the principal made an announcement encouraging children not to use them, if possible, for the sake of the janitor. Ridiculous. I went to a strict Catholic school with uniforms. The kids in 4th 8th grade had to wear belts until we got a new principal who made it mandatory for all the kids in the school to wear belts. Many bathroom accidents from kindergartners, 1st and 2nd graders later, and complaints from parents. Of course the principal rescinded her addition to the dress code. More recently, this principal was fired for embezzling money from the school. I bet she also owned the only belt store in town. You can't speak a foreign language at work unless you're a certified translator in that language. We had a guy in a customer service position that spoke Spanish as a second language. Yeah. His regular Spanish speaking customers were confused as to why he could no longer speak to them in Spanish, because they knew he was fluent. Eventually Jay explains to them in English that they made it against the rules for him to speak Spanish. They weren't happy about that. In medicine we have a similar rule, but it only applies to official updates and documents. Many people speak Spanish, but you need to have an official medical interpreter for consents and whatnot. It's a liability thing. I feel like that's racist slash xenophobic. No more swipe cards to get in the building. From now on, it's going to be fingerprint sensors. That was 2 weeks before COVID-19 happened. So stupid. Kids already had to remember to bring books, stationery, lunch money and, because of the pandemic, a mask and hand sanitizer. Now they're expected to remember to bring their fingers too. Edit. Sorry, I'm an idiot. I realize now they only need to remember one finger. My workplace also tried to swap out to fingerprints, but needed to go back, because a few of us were rock climbers whose fingerprints change constantly. I worked at a language teaching center, where the lessons are pre-planned by the curriculum, and on weekdays we often only have 2 to 3 hours of classes sporadically spread out through the afternoon/evening. The management were pretty chill when I started, and people just planned their lessons in bulk, which basically entailed checking your schedule and printing out the required unit/session worksheets and just showed up 10 minutes before to deliver the lesson. On weekends we'd have full 10-hour workdays. Apart from that we'd have the odd training session or faculty meeting, but otherwise you could basically go home or go do whatever you wanted between lessons. All the provided apartments were within 10 minutes walking distance of the center, so this was pretty ideal. The nice managers left, and the new management were buttholes who started scheduling mandatory office hours, where we had to be in the center with absolutely nothing to do. There'd be a 12 o'clock staff meeting, and my next lesson would be at 4 to 6 p.m. And then 3.5 bull deuce office hours in the middle. When we asked them what we should do, they said think about your teaching methods. Basically bull deuce quitting. A bunch of the other teachers starting watching movies on the projectors in the spare classrooms. I brought in my Switch. Some people would just straight up go nap on the beanbags in the reading nook. The thing was, there was literally no busy work they could generate, and soon it was apparent to everyone, especially prospective new students and parents, how unprofessional and awful it made the center look. The managers embarrassingly just stopped scheduling and enforcing these office hours. Go find something to do. The battle cry of the useless poop tea manager. Back in the early zeros, my high school implemented a policy that you had to wear your ID tag at all times. If you didn't have it on, you were sent home. So many students lost their ID tag to go grab food or skip a class. We were the only graduating class to wear them all 4 years. The policy ended soon after. My school had something similar, required IDs with provided lanyards. Failure to have it resulted in getting a shirt sticker from the office and a detention, which was aiding the custodial staff in the afternoon. Nobody liked this policy much. My high school had lanyards and ID cards too, along with a mandatory color code. You had to wear navy blue or white tops. Problem was their rules were very poorly written, so they were constantly evolving. Rules never specified that you had to wear the lanyard around your neck, so we wore them on our hips. They said you had to use the school provided lanyard, but there was no rules against personalizing them. So cue them all being covered in controversial or obscene buttons. They also only said you had to wear a navy blue or white top. They thought enough to clarify the shade of blue at least, but it never said how to wear it. So I would just wear my usual all black outfit and tie a navy blue sweater around my waist. Fayo. I used to work as a security guard, and one company made it really clear that if you don't have your ID tag visible, you will be immediately escorted out of the building. No excuses. It was pretty awkward sometimes, because I had to basically tell the worker to stop what they are doing, hang up calls etc, and then escort them out.